So Delve is not in Path of Exile 2 yet, that's been announced. However, there's a reason why I'm not concerned, and it has to do with the endgame mapping system, which I'm really happy about. Anyway, let's talk about it. Okay, so getting into it, we don't have Delve in Path of Exile 2, and at least so far, I'm pretty confident it'll make its way into the game. Am I a little upset about this? Just a teeny bit, right? I really wanted to see Delve in Path of Exile 2, but we're going to have to wait just a little longer. That being said, there was comments made in the Q&A, and even Jonathan Rogers said that he was upset that Delve wasn't there yet, and we can pretty much bank that Delve is going to come back. So we're going to be taking on Alls and Crystal Kings and stuff like that eventually. But the endgame system, funnily very, very reminiscent of a very similar system that's already in Path of Exile, which I'm drawing the link to now. Now, there's other things to note. The Path of Exile 2 endgame system is very similar in its nature to the Echo system out of Last Epoch, for anyone who's played that. Actually, this system works very similarly. You go to Echoes. If you fail the Echo, you lose the bonus from the Echo, or if you fail the encounter with the boss, you then have to reset and then do it again. Things like that, but it's very similar in nature. That being said, Path of Exile works significantly differently, where the drops in the actual map itself, it's not going to be outside of the map unless you're unlocking Atlas points and stuff like that. So there's definitely some elements of Last Epoch, and arguably, Last Epoch has a really, really good echo or mapping system in this nature. It's just a little more simplified down than the robust system that we're looking at with Path of Exile 2. That brings us to the discussion around why I'm pretty confident Path of Exile 2's mapping endgame system is simply just a big, grandiose, infinite version of Delve. So, fortunately, Steve, you've got something else to try and farm to the bottom of the depths to. So on the screen right now, you can see Delve. And you might notice something very similar between Delve and the endgame mapping system that's been announced in Path of Exile 2. So, we have boss nodes here, we have special nodes here, we have nodes that give us certain outcomes. We also have nodes that give us resources, we have nodes that are basically target farmable with different specific league content, like, for example, Beyond or Bestiary, for example. The other thing you'll notice is, there's Abyss in here, and there's a number of mechanics in here that you could basically farm and target and move around on. Also, there's the flexibility of being able to go in any direction that you like. And if you don't pass a node, you can have another crack at it. That's a little bit different in Path of Exile 2, which I feel like will be changed. Here's a breach node, for example. Looks familiar, doesn't it, based on the reveal that we had yesterday? Anyway. Moral of the story, there's Harbinger. Moral of the story, I'm not concerned that Delve isn't in Path of Exile 2 yet, because I think Path of Exile 2's endgame system is actually very similar to Delve, if not a much more upscaled version of this particular mechanic, and it's really good to see. I'm really happy with the endgame system in Path of Exile 2. There's a lot of things that are really interesting about it, and we're going to talk about it in this video, but this is the biggest parallel I'll make. So for those that are saying, oh no, Delve in Path of Exile 2, well, guess what? The entire endgame in Path of Exile 2 is basically just one big Delve map. Okay, so I started deep diving the reveal, and my god, there is so many elements that is going into that endgame that comes from not just Delve, Last Epoch, from original mechanics in Path of Exile 1 that worked really well. As I started to go through, I realized this is actually very, very significant, and I wanted to talk about each one of them. So let's unpack it all and talk about it. Okay, so the first thing is it's infinite and ever expanding, right? So basically that's Delve. That's exactly what Delve is, except Steve found the pit that was the bottom of Delve at like 60 or 70,000, something like that. This goes in every direction, which is absolutely insane. So it's basically just going to be able to farm for days on end. The other thing is you start at a thing called the Ziggurat. So basically it's your center point, or where your map device links up, similar to like your Atlas device. That's basically what that is. You use things called Waystones. So Waystones are how you progress further in tiers of maps through farming through the areas. And they make comment that everything is totally random. So each map is totally random, and basically what spawns in it is what spawns in it. This actually gets to the next thing that I found, and the comment or the terminology was very similar to what's already in Path of Exile 1. Okay, biomes. So biomes are actually a mechanic from Path of Exile 1. They specifically are a mechanic that was from Path of Exile 1 in Delve. So basically you would have different zones. The colors of them would denote the types of fossils and types of things that would spawn. They do make mention that certain maps will only spawn in certain biomes, which means that potentially you could target farm certain outcomes. The parallel here is certain fossils in the past would only spawn in certain biomes in Delve. It's exactly the same in Path of Exile 2. I would assume there are certain mechanics and or certain drops that will only spawn from those certain biomes. Essentially, if you have a snow zone, you're going to expect a snowy map. If you have a hot area, you expect a hot volcanic area. In your map that you're going to play, or if you're going to have a sandy or desert arid area, you're going to have a desert arid area, so on. You get the gist. So essentially, this is totally out of the book of Delve, right? Biomes. Actually, it's on the wiki for Delve as well, funnily enough. Okay, so on the screen we have a screenshot of the mapping system. This is referred to as a city. Now, what's really interesting? Guess what's in Delve and Path of Exile? Yep, you guessed it. Cities. So this is actually a Delve mechanic, and this is like a bridged out, fleshed out Delve mechanic. The other thing that you'll also see is on the cities or around the cities or any node, right? You have specific modifiers, and this is why the parallel is very similar to Delve. See, this is a boss node, this is a breach node, this is a ritual node, this is a boss node. Not sure what this is. It could be a failed node or just an undiscovered node, and I'm not sure what the blue or green yet denotes. It could be complete, actually looks like completed, but that looks like incomplete. That's also Delirium down there. So yeah, it's actually basically just Delve. Like it's Delve, cities are in Delve, but there's also something else that they've shown that's very Delve-centric as well, and I have a good idea as to what it might be, and they didn't say it, but I'm pretty sure I know how we'll be able to access them. Okay, so unlinked nodes. Again, this is a mechanic from Delve. So as you can see here, the faint line, as faint as it is, goes to this node here, goes up here, but there's no linkage for this reliquary vault. And they alluded to we're going to have to figure out how this works right. Well, this is actually something in Delve that you can do to basically you have to follow pathing. Sometimes you run into pathing that has no link and you have to research around it. I would say to unlock these, you need to complete a certain number of adjacent nodes. So for example, you need to complete all nodes around this node to unlock this node or the path to this node. Because as we can see, there's no path here, there's no path here, there's no path here, no path here, no path here, right? No path here. So what I would say is you would need to be able to complete this node, this node, this node, this node, this node, this node, to complete like a chain to find the path, and then it'll unlock the path, which is like here, could be coming from here, here, or here. But basically we have unlinked nodes returning to the game from essentially Delve. Okay, so the next thing that's in the game are towers, as you can see on the screen here, right? This is actually directly, and it actually looks almost the same as the Waystone towers out of Last Epoch as well, that you progress in the Monolith of Faith to basically unlock further echo nodes. So this is actually a mechanic out of Last Epoch, and it looks very similar. It's you know, credit to them. It's actually a really innovative way to make this work, but yeah, it is already a mechanic that's been designed. It's just been implemented in Path of Exile 2 in a very different way. But the same outcome is the same outcome, right, of Last Epoch. So it's used to reveal all the adjacent nodes around a certain cluster zone. So yeah, you can have a look and expand your atlas out further. Okay, so the next mechanic I noticed was very similar to something I've seen before in Path of Exile, was actually the corruption system. So this is the corruption system that they showed off yesterday, but this isn't original. This is something that comes from Path of Exile 1. If you played it when Atlas of Worlds came out many, many, many years ago, it eventually changed sort of later on, but let's pull that up on screen and I'll show you what the parallel for this is. Okay, so this is the old Atlas of World in Path of Exile 1, right? So this was many years ago. basically how this worked is you had a corruption system or an influence system. So these were elder influence maps, these were shaper influence maps, right? You can see like the total parallel of difference between Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile 1. It's just so much bigger for Path of Exile 2. But basically how this worked is the corruption sort of broke out on the map, and then the predominant amount of corruption that took over, that would be the instance that you would end up fighting, whether it be the Elder or the Shaper. And basically, very similarly, the new corruption system looks pretty similar to that, right? And so I would expect this corruption to eventually like take over time, depending on your completion of nodes. Whether or not nodes already completed stops the corruption, that probably is the case there. But yeah, no, it's basically a reimagined system, and I think it's great. I actually really like the original influence system. It made endgame mapping really interesting in Path of Exile 1, as opposed to the chore that it is now, so I'm 100% for that. Okay, so the final thing I'll talk about is the tablet system in Path of Exile 2. So essentially, the tablet system is the same sort of effect as Sextants used to be on the older Atlas of Worlds Atlas, and I'll pull this up on screen now. Basically, what this does is you could sextant and then it would affect the neighboring maps around that particular map. This was different to when they added Watchstones into the game, which was a totally different implementation again, and it affected the zones. But it allowed you to basically cross sextants over, and in this case, it's very likely that if you've got towers in close proximity, you'll be able to overlap your tablets and the modifiers of your tablets to be able to dictate the outcomes of towers. So potentially you could have like 4 towers and then have like an overlap zone with a few maps in between, and then basically you'll be able to impact those maps with like anywhere up to 4 towers, something like that, similar to what you can see in the original node, where you'd have these overlap points, and then you could like mega super juice your maps if you had a character that could do it, and basically you'll be on almost death's door the entire time trying to do the map, but it'll be really, really rewarding at the end of the day. And I suspect it's a very similar outcome to the original Path of Exile 1 implementation of sextants in this way. Okay, so I had some other things here. So basically, if you die, you'll brick nodes. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Precursor artifacts are taking the place of shrines from Path of Exile 1. Strongboxes have returned. Essences are going to be baked into the mapping system as well, not as a league mechanic, but just as like a standard thing. No more scarabs. I personally hate scarabs. I find them tedious and a pain in the butt. So no more scarabs are in the game as well, which I really like, and I think that's a great direction moving forwards because it refines it and cleans up the currency system, because I think scarabs are just overkill in Path of Exile 1 as it is. Agree with me or not, I just prefer not having to use scarabs. It's a much more comfortable mapping experience, and overall the mapping experience looks like it's just going to be like less setup, less like intricate mucking around. Similar to Path of Exile 1 was just probably too complicated from like years and years and years of adding different systems. Nothing sort of cohesively worked, whereas this is a better way to play Endgame, and because it basically looks like Delve, I really, really like it. I think it's fantastic. I'm already looking forward to it. I don't know how I'm going to go back to Path of Exile 1, to be honest with you, because this system just looks way better than PoE 1 in every possible way. Okay, so that's about as deep as I want to get for this video. I just wanted to draw some comparisons from being an older player, the things that I've seen that they're pulling in from other games. I think they've picked up like all the frustrations of mapping that, to simplify it down, they've made those changes, but also they're basically looking at taking mechanics that work really well in other games like Last Epoch, or old mechanics in Path of Exile 1 that worked really well, that some of us older players really enjoyed. And they're basically just mashing it all together to create the perfect endgame. Also, basically, it's Delve. It's Delve 2.0, let's be real. It's Delve in every possible way. It's got Biomes, city nodes, unlinked nodes. It looks like Delve. It feels like Delve. It probably smells like Delve. But anyway, that's it. That's my take on the endgame mapping system. I love it. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. I'm now streaming back on Twitch and YouTube simultaneously at the same time. So I don't know how that's going to go with YouTube audio, but whatever. If you want to follow the X, the link's below. Also, my second channel, which is mini painting. And the last one is, if you want to follow the Patreon, the link's down below. There's no requirement to, but if you want to, you can. But yeah, anyway, I will see you guys next time, and the next video is going to be some ideas for builds that we cooked on stream last night and that I've been thinking about for the last day since the announcement. It's going to be insane, the builds that we can make. We threw around the idea of could you play dual staves at one point. I don't think you can, but, you know, there might be a possibility. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time, and have a good one.